Hello, everybody. Welcome to Organic Politics. Please join me and David Bonta today. We're going to be talking about climate change and the solar solution to climate change. Dave, I will say that I was up in Montpelier, in Burlington last weekend for the climate change action around the tar sands spill.
Oh, okay.
And there were lots of people who were asking for the governors to come out of the Sheraton and speak to them. And I will tell you that if you care to elect me, I will be somebody who comes out and talks to the people when they gather to have a grievance with government. I was really annoyed that none of the governors came out to speak to the people who had spent all the time going up there and had real concerns about the tar sands. So I have invited Dave here because he has really a lot of passion and a lot of knowledge to share.
Thank you.
So I want to start with myths around solar power, and why do people think that it can't really do very much? And
Oh, that's a great question. That is among the top 3 prejudices about solar. It is the second prejudice, that it doesn't do very much, that it doesn't work very well. The truth is, in the United States and in most of the world, solar is a very effective energy producer. Our sun up in the sky is hitting us with all sorts of power all the time, all day long. Compared to, in the United States, compared to Germany, if you actually wanted to make a comparison of one of the states that receives the same amount of resource as Germany, which is the world leader in solar, the world leader, the European leader certainly, the state that you would pick would be Alaska. Alaska, our coldest state, the state that's most northerly, is the one that has the resource similar to Germany. So everywhere else in the United States is easy.
yeah,
And when people ask me in Vermont, they say, well, how could it possibly work in Vermont? You have so many clouds. And I say, well, it must be working because for the last 14 years, I've only had solar as a resource. All of our electricity is generated by solar. And it's true, we've had a backup generator from time to time. You have to have some kind of a backup, but really 95% of the time is just our solar resource working for us because we have some batteries and we store it up. Today, people don't have to do that. The technology has gotten to the point that you use the grid as your battery. And so I advocate that people do still have batteries for the occasional power outage.
yeah. But when you look at the way it's heating up, it really is getting hotter, and you've got all these cars, and all the cars, and you have these parking lots. They could have solar panel shade places.
Sure.
Oh my God, the potential is so huge. What's stopping it? What's
Well, it's those prejudices again. It doesn't work. That's the second one. The first prejudice that is probably the most prevalent is the prejudice that states solar is too unaffordable. It's too expensive. And it's the first thing that comes to everybody's mind when you talk about solar. Everybody says, geez, I love solar. It's a great thing. I wish we could afford it. And the funny thing is that solar has just come down in price so much over the last few years. When I got involved in the business, a solar panel alone was over $5 a watt. A year or two before I got involved in the business, it was $7 a watt. Today you can buy whole systems and have them installed for around $3.50 a watt. And that's down $1 a watt from last year. So when I say watt, people say, what does that mean? What is a watt?
Yeah, how much are we spending on our electric bill per watt? I guess it's like 40.
You have to understand what you're using, and your electric bills all have in the corner of them what your monthly usage is.
Yeah.
And on average, most people these days are still using around 40 kilowatt hours a day. And so that can be accomplished with a solar panel system of around 10 kilowatt.
I will say we got a little solar light installed recently, and it's just for a light in the living room, and I was really advocating for it to be in the kitchen, but it's in kind of the dining room, and it's guilt-free. It's just this beautiful, beautiful feeling.
That's the thing about solar is when you have it and you use it and you see the results of it, it feels great. because you are guilt-free. You recognize that you're not doing anything to harm the environment. There is another prejudice about solar panels, that they consume more energy than they'll ever pay back in their lives. That's a myth. Another one is that they are full of harmful chemicals, harmful materials. None of these things are really true in the long term, and even in the short term. You hear things about solar panels being going to the landfill list. I've been in this for a while. Most of the solar panels that, as a matter of fact, except for one or two that I've had to take back myself and rewire, pretty much every single one of them is still on active duty.
Yeah.
So they don't wind up going into the landfills. They have a 25-year guarantee and probably decades of service life in them. The older panels that were put out in the desert, they're burned bronze-colored from the 50s, and they're still putting out a fairly large amount of the power that they were constructed to do. And in satellites in outer space, solar panels are still up there working. So they certainly are reliable. The good news is they've become much, much more affordable, and in 14 states, solar power is actually lower cost than utility.
Oh my God.
And if there is still any obstruction or any resistance to moving into a solar energy resource, at this point, it's pretty much been wiped out with the financing options that are available.
So do you see anything but a wide open highway to having our entire state fueled by solar?
Solar is one of the options. Wind is another option. Lately, some of the folks have been, concerned about the wind resource on the ridge lines. Solar actually could be doing most of the work. We have Hydro-Quebec, which is a base resource, which we could continue to use. But solar really would be a very easily deployed, very quickly deployed resource for us.
Right. And there's new technology coming out about having a thinner film or films that go on windows.
There is. First Solar and a number of other companies that have done exploration in different types of composites for solar generation. They have spray paint and they have different kind of fibers and things like that, nano solar. This is all good, but even if you didn't want to wait for those things to come along, you can get involved with solar right now for a very low cost. I mentioned the 40 kilowatt hour a day home with a 10 kilowatt hour system, and I mentioned $5 a watt. So when you've added it all up, if you wanted to actually do that system, you would be looking at a fairly expensive price tag. But the thing is, we don't really need to use 40 kilowatt hours a day. At my house, we started out using 1 kilowatt hour a day. And then I got in the business and I was able to buy a few more panels, so I did. 2 kilowatt hours a day. So you don't actually have to use 40. If you chose to use less, if you chose to make make your power use a little more responsible, so that you don't have to have 40 panels on the house, so you could get by with 6.
So you don't have to do this cold turkey.
No, you can do it in stages. You can. It's a modular technology. You can do it incremental, and all these things really will help with the climate change problem.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I have this vision of many more households being independent energy stations, so we can get freedom from our bills.
Oh, so much, so easy. Every house that has a breaker panel in it, there's a 200 amp breaker in most of them. Some of them have 100, but that's fine. Mine has a 60, because we don't have that kind of power load. We have energy efficiency going all over the place. But a 200 amp service panel can give as good as it gets.
Okay.
It can take in its 200 amps when required, but it can give out 200 amps. So when you say, well, what's the use of that? We don't have to change the infrastructure. You don't have to have these reliability projects, these giant wires coming in, all these EMFs that people are concerned about, the two-headed cow and all that thing. Who needs that? So much electricity is lost on these large lines. I heard it said, I haven't proven it myself, but somebody did prove it. They took a tubular fluorescent light and they just held it up underneath one of these and it actually glowed. And so that's what that is. It's picking up the stray electricity, the EMFs off the wire. So we wouldn't have to have so much waste
Right.
if our power was directly being
Right.
created where it's
Right.
used.
Can we go back to the ridge lines? I think that wind power is beautiful, but not when it's going to affect the watershed and the wildlife. Well, I see some up on the plateau before Burlington, where it's not really wrecking a watershed, and that's working well. But I'm much more excited about solar and also, of course, what hemp can do. And I wanted to really, we were talking before the show, so there's so many things that I wanted to cover in this show, which was how the solar potential is undermined by the media, which of course is behind oil and staying in our immoral addiction.
Well, I mentioned the three prejudices, and the three prejudices again are solar costs too much, solar doesn't work, and solar's ugly. And the top two prejudices are really probably the most prevalent. And the way the media does this is actually, it's quite sneaky. They don't come out and say flash at 6 o'clock, solar doesn't work, tape at 11 or whatever it is. They don't say flash, solar costs too much. They do it actually in a more subversive way. They say, flash, a new technology has just been discovered that promises to make solar affordable and more reliable and available. So when they say that kind of thing, people say, oh, I better wait until I hear more. Well, we've had that same newscast for the last 30 years. The same guy or other people have been saying the same thing. Flash, there's a brand new technology coming. Basically, where they're telling everybody, don't invest in solar today. It doesn't work or costs too much. But the truth is, if anybody actually looked into it, solar does work very well around the world and is very cost effective. And if you would add just a little bit of conservation, take some of those kilowatt hours away from that 40 kilowatt hour a day habit, go to 10, go to 20. It's not hard to do.
Well, you don't even have to approach it like that, because once you've taken the step and even put a little solar panel that we have, it's only, then it's like, oh, this is fun.
It's great. It's addictive. Solar is a gateway drug.
It's very fun. It's a gateway drug.
Those little, the little lamps and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Once we started with solar, we started with a 40-watt module. We ran just one little battery, and my God, it ran the little ham radio, the little CB radio that we had, and it ran a couple of lights. My goodness, it works. Next thing you know, we were addicted. So now we have a 2 kilowatt system going, and I have so much extra power. I'm looking for ways to use it. I charge all of my electric lawn tools, the electric lawnmowers. I have 2 of them. I have an electric motorcycle. So we're charging our transportation, we're charging our lawn care.
Oh, very cool.
All of our tools,
very wonderful.
computers, everything is running from the solar system, and I still have too much.
We just got
By 11 o'clock, my batteries are full, and they don't want it anymore.
But last week we were up in Burlington, and there was a new juice bar that is serving fresh squeezed juice, and it was like kale, pear, ginger, and the entire cart was built with the guy had welded together bicycle parts, and then he welded together like gears for a little seat thing, and then they had these panels on the top that was
so
powering
cool.
the juice, and then they used the extra juice that they didn't use, the water, to rinse it out, that they would put back on their gardens and it was a seriously excellent juice, too, on top of it.
Real applications, everyday examples that people can look at and see solar works great.
Yeah.
And then when it comes down to the whole affordability thing, it's really not hard to do it. Some of the ways that we can get solar in without a lot of upfront expense right now, you have some lease programs out there. I don't really think that's the best deal, because it's just for homeowners. It's really never been the best deal to lease something rather than buy it. None of us, really most of us that are not in home business or whatever, would choose to lease a car or home. We tend to take ownership, and that's the best deal. With the cost of solar coming down so quickly, and the reliability and all of these things out there for 25 years or so, it doesn't make any sense to lease something and buy it 2 or 3 or 4 times. You're better off to buy it once and arrange for a payment schedule that would meet the same payment that you were putting on your electric bill.
Right.
That's not hard to do. We're all paying an electric bill anyway.
So I wanted to also, describe what they're doing to undermine solar, as if they were doing it for computers, so it becomes really crystal clear. If they said that computers they'll be coming out with things that might be, how did you say it?
Well, if they wanted to kill a technology, the best thing to do is just tell people just keep waiting until it's finished, until it's proven.
Yeah.
And if they had done that with cars or anything like that, imagine we'd still be walking around or taking bicycles. I mean, there's a point where the media is not helping.
Right.
And in so many ways, it's not helping with our economy because there are so many jobs that could be created between manufacturing solar products and installing solar products. So we have this huge hole to fill in our economics where people have to go back to work.
Right, and also then there's if you do have a battery bank, there's the person who can come around and service the
There's
batteries.
service contracts, there's all sorts of things, and at the end of the day, it's all more affordable than currently what we're doing.
Right.
So it just makes all kinds of sense in the world.
And it's the freedom from the guilt. I mean, we are all responsible. No, we're responsible for killing our people for going over for oil. We need to own part of that responsibility.
That's right.
So when we get on solar, it's like, oh my God, I'm not part of that horrible,
You speak about the joy
thing.
of solar, and when I talk to people about, how's your system working? Do you have any questions, any regrets? They say, the only regret I have is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
Because it's a joyful thing.
Yeah.
It is a guilt-free type of power. It's wonderful to take a shower and feel the hot water cascade on you. You say, this came from the sun today.
Yeah.
This came from the sun, and it didn't cost anything.
Yeah.
It was, it cost something to set it up, but once that payment is done, and it can be incorporated into the same kind of payment that you put out for your fossil fuel choices. That is, if you're used to spending, $30 a month or whatever it is, you can make a payment plan for that.
Yeah.
So it isn't like it has to cost any more. The only difference is, unlike fossil fuel choices, it does have a payout.
Right.
Many people come into the store and they say, my goodness, what's your return on investment? What is my payback formula? I say, well, I don't know, 5 or 6 years after we figure, that's too long.
Yeah, well, what are they getting
Takes
from
too long.
oil?
I say, well, okay, stop. What's your option? Let's say that you choose not to take this option.
Yeah.
How long have you had your electric bill? 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, how much have you paid? I don't know, around $12,000, maybe $15,000. Okay, how long are you going to stay on that option? Another 10 years, 20 years?
For the rest of the
So
life.
$30,000 on your plan, $16,000 on mine, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and then you end up with
And then
something
you
to
own the
sell.
power.
And you have something to sell
And
back.
your house is going to sell quicker because you have no electric bill.
And if you configure it right when all the power goes down
let's
from
do a
whatever
reality
solar.
check here. It's like at that point, it's like that is a no-fail logical argument that cannot be undermined.
Yeah. So as you know, I'm in this gubernatorial race, and the more I'm in it, the more serious I'm getting about it. And we have launched a pledge that is to get off oil in 5 and to go organic in 5, and 5 years to freedom, and partially because I want to do that, and I know I need the collective effort to get there, and I'm glad to hear you say great, because when we see the young people who are going to inherit this earth and the way that it could be, the abundance that could be.
We haven't even talked about climate change yet, which is the subject of this show today. But the real issue, when you mentioned the children coming up, I heard a story on the radio the other day. A fellow started a group called Climate Parents, and he questioned the wisdom of our society of saving for college and these other things to help the children, for the future. He says, we have to start asking ourselves, what good is saving for these Ivy League educations if some of these schools are going to be underwater? The reality is Greenland is melting, and it's all ice, and that's going to be gone. And the polar ice cap is melting, and that's going to be gone. And adding insult to injury, which even makes it sadder, is that there are a whole bunch of oil companies that are vying for the contracts to go up to the top of the world and extract the last little bit of oil that's out there. Adding more methane and more of carbon dioxide to the air. So
we have a lot of watchers and listeners who will say that the climate fluctuates anyways. And to them, what I will say is what we all agree on is that we need clean air, clean water to breathe, and the remedy for those is the exact same remedy for climate change. And the remedy for being a debt slave is the same remedies for climate change.
Exactly. It's the same. You could pick your reasons. If it's economics, good. If it's about security, social, having a stable economy, All of those things are good. If it's about national defense, that's good. The Army is moving big time into biofuels and renewable energy. They're rapidly becoming huge customers of these things.
Well, that's right, but they also have to alter their model of being pro-kill to being a pro-life.
Pro-life, I agree. Yeah, it
It's
would be
just-
wonderful if we could turn that power, which is almost most of our tax dollar goes to.
Well, that's
defense.
a whole
It'd be
other thing.
wonderful
You
to turn
mentioned
that power to
mentioned
good
property
things.
ownership, and one of the things that I want to that I am grappling with in a different segment of work of policy is there is no longer any property ownership when we have property taxation, because even on our deeds now we have the tenancy. The word tenancy is there, and when we're paying and we're owing taxes and can have our property removed from us because of property taxation, then there's no longer any true ownership. You can buy your car and pay it off, and they're not going to come back and take it away for lack of taxation.
In the larger philosophical point of view from that, I would say none of us really own anything anyway.
Well,
We're
there you
stewards of the earth,
Yeah.
and it's our job to make it a
Yeah.
habitable place for the next generations.
Yeah, but the taxation is we've got to get a grip on that, because we cannot continue to force people to pay for what's morally reprehensible. Yet we
You're
do
right.
need to contribute everybody needs to contribute.
Well, I'm happy to report that in Vermont, and with my current business in renewable energy, I make so modest an income, because I do live off grid, and because I grow a lot of our food, and we have made arrangements with the hunters and the people that provide food in our area, and with the new market down in Bellows Falls for the farmers and all that. We're at a point that we don't need a lot of money.
Yeah.
So our security
Yeah.
is actually
Yeah.
to be able to live
Yeah.
on about $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
When you live on $20,000 a year, the tax bite is fairly modest.
Yeah, yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm often getting calls from the state saying, "Do you need any fuel assistance? Do you need any food stamps?" I say, "No, we're fine. Give it to someone that needs it." But
Yeah.
we've actually created in our own homestead an economy that relies on very little cash.
That's very
All of our
interesting.
needs are met.
We just stayed over with some people who had built an orb, a dome, just amazing place. And same thing, people don't even want to use money, and they figured out how. And Dave, I have to say, you are one of the brightest, happiest people, except for when you're really grappling with dark stuff. But I don't think it's affected your capacity to be happy. I think
No, we're actually very secure, and I've often thought that great ideas like the platform planks you're running on for your run for the governor, all of these wonderful, great ideas come about when people feel secure. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Democracy is best discussed on full bellies," and it's true. And all great ideas are best discussed when people feel full and satisfied. So for me and my wife, Danny, we live a good life. We live in the spirit of the Nearing's good life. That is, we've looked at the challenges of the things that people need to have, and we've secured most of them. We still have to pay property taxes, but for me, they're modest, and basically I don't mind paying local property taxes because I can see that they're helping do local things. I'd rather roll up my sleeves and grab a shovel and help a road crew if I could, but they don't allow for that.
right. Well, that's a whole conversation for a whole nother day. So would you? Do you have anything like the PACE? We didn't touch the PACE program.
Well, that's under the financing. When we talk about ways to make solar affordable, PACE is the greatest program never used.
And it hasn't even been used
And
yet.
it hasn't been used. That's the thing that bothers me about PACE. PACE was a great idea, started in Berkeley a few years ago, swept the country because it became one of the easiest to understand by the general person, where you take a voluntary assessment on your property in order to supply the funding for a long-term payback like a renewable energy system. So if I wanted to do it, an example, if I wanted to have $20,000 to create a solar electric system and a solar water system and some backup geothermal or whatever I wanted, if I wanted to put that into insulation, windows, and say it all came to $20,000, after the rebates and these kind of things that are available, I could go to my town. I'd say I want to have a PACE infusion. I could have that done over 20 years.
And that it will move with the house.
It'll move with the house.
So in other words,
$1,000 a year,
yeah.
plus a little interest,
Yeah.
not a lot,
Yeah.
but it all becomes less than what I was paying before.
Yeah.
And it has to in order to qualify. So if I may have been paying $4,000 or $5,000 a year for all of my energy needs, my electricity and my heat. And that's not obscene these days. I heard of one lady paid $3,000 one year for heating, oil heating. So $4,000 and $5,000 a year is not unheard of for a home. But even if it was $2,000, I'd still be better off if I was paying $1,000 a year. So it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that people have a real hard time comprehending it. The automatic red flags go up when people hear assessment. They think, oh my God, I don't want an assessment. Well, look into it a little deeper. It's not a bad thing. You're going to be paying a lot of money for energy. It's only
and you
going to
can
go
feel
up
good
every
about
year.
it.
You're going to feel good about it.
And I'm going to go home and do it.
What a stimulus for the local economy.
Well, it's not my home, but
to help jobs.
Yeah.
In little Vermont, good old Vermont flipped the whole Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac thing on its ear and said, we're going to put the assessment underneath the prime lien holder, the prime mortgage, the bank. So Freddie and Fannie said, fine, okay. Little Vermont figured that out.
Okay, and Little Vermont is the only state that's going to pierce the status quo of having money out of politics and having the power returned to the people, including the power of their energy from the sun.
Some of your viewers may remember Marion Leonard.
Okay.
Marion Leonard, beautiful lady. I think she got to be nearly 100 years old when she passed a couple years ago. She used to come up to see me at Solar Fest. She used to come up and to the point she could almost not walk anymore. Her sons would help her, and she'd reach out, she'd hug me, she'd say, Dave, never give up. Never give up. Keep talking about this stuff. Please keep talking. Her slogan was, Little Vermont, the state to reinvent the United States.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Thank you, Dave.
Well, you're welcome.
And thank you, Mike. Thank you, Denise.